Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, joined once more by Tayte and Elliott for another entry in the Steven Spielberg Retrospective. We are now on episode 25 of the retrospective, and we are in the year 2005 with Munich, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Eric Bana, a new collaborator for him. And we're here to give our thoughts on this whilst looking back. And before we even get into that, of course, this is being pre-recorded. This will be premiered on the channel. We are not recording this live. But how are we all doing tonight?
Yeah, doing okay. It's very interesting looking into this film and watching this film. We'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, will be an interesting review, I think, in general.
Yeah, at the time of recording this, I'm sort of halfway in performing a summer pantomime. So going from, being happy, smiley for a kid's show to watching this on my day off was, it was a thing. It was a thing.
Yeah, it's when I figured out, I was like, oh my, are you sure you're free to do it? I didn't realize. And you asked, like, fair play, because this is a very, very difficult subject matter.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll get another Treasure Island film one day. I don't know if there's been one since The Muppets. Was The Muppets, I think they did it? I can't remember.
Wait, when was Muppets Treasure Island? I thought the 96. Disney Treasure Island would have been past that.
I'm not familiar with the text.
Treasure Planet, dude. No,
yeah, Treasure Planet. Yeah. That would have been that. Well, that was early noughties, wasn't it? Treasure Planet.
Yeah, I want to say.
And pre-recording this, D23 would have been and gone by the time. So maybe they've just announced an adaptation of it. Who knows these days?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for it.
Yeah.
Everything. There's been a whole, they've announced the rest of the 60 films, whatever it is, that they're going to adapt and put on the screen. And Pinocchio will now be out. If you didn't enjoy Tom Hanks and Elvis, we'll get Tom Hanks in Pinocchio, which is going to be an interesting story. But this is not a Tom Hanks film. That was a few weeks ago on the terminal, and we're going to get more in a few weeks with the post. And I'm not going to put you both on the spot of a question, because I don't think this is the kind of film where I can say, like, what's your favorite Eric Bana film? Not what's your favorite Spielberg film. We've got a top 10 fan. I'm just not going to put anyone on the spot of a question today. So what we'll do, we'll go to the socials right away. So everybody watching at home, please do comment your thoughts on Munich. We've spoke before we hit record on this. Contextually, 2005 is very different to 2022 with the subject matter of this film. I'm just going to leave that there. We may bring up conversation of current politics. We're all mature enough to discuss that. But what I will say, it makes for a very interesting viewing of this film. What I would love to hear is potentially someone in the comments that might have seen this on the release 17 years ago, seen it recently. Please let us know your thoughts. This is going to be a very interesting one to talk about. And as we've said, if you're a fan of film, you're a fan of Steven Spielberg, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. I mentioned D23. There'll probably been a D23 video out by then. Hopefully, we've had an Indiana Jones trailer drop. Hopefully, we've had a poster, a title, because next week we've got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so we're going to need it. So everybody, please comment your thoughts and say, where can people find us about those videos that we might announce?
People can find us on Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy. People can find us on Facebook and letterboxd.com. Just type in Cinema Savvy, you'll find us on there. And people can also find us on Redbubble in the description below, where you can pick up a t-shirt or whatever you want with Cinema Savvy's name on it and help out the channel.
Definitely. And Elliot, for yourself first, actually, we'll just, we mentioned you currently do some acting as well. We've got a link in the description for your YouTube channel. You've been on a few of these videos now, and it's been amazing to get you on again. Where can the people find you, and what can they expect from the channel? Because we don't normally have another intro, so we'll just get you plugged straight away.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Hakuna Machatter, same on YouTube as well. I've been so wrapped up in my show that there aren't any current plans on the channel at the moment. But if you are following me on Twitter, where I am still being very active, then that'll be the first place to know when videos are up and running again on the channel. I focus mainly on positive chat on diversity and representation in film and TV.
Definitely, so everybody, please check out it. There's some really good videos on that channel, and not telling you what to do, but I'm sure over the next few months there's going to be some potentially interesting ones as well, which will be very exciting. There's a big series out at the moment. This is being recorded before that comes out, but I don't think I'm going to be prepared to deal with the internet on the 2nd of September. Those that know what that series is.
It's kind of why I've not touched it yet as well. But by the time this video is released, I'm sure I would have touched it.
We will have a spoiler-free review. That'll already be out because the series will be out. But yeah, it's going to be... I think it's going to be like House of Dragon. I think a lot of people will be watching it. By the time this video comes out, we'll know if that's true or not. But yeah, it's going to be another one of them. And I'm pretty sure there's a new Ryan Johnson film out next few weeks. So we're going to get all the amazing episode 8 discourse coming back for a few weeks, aren't we? Of course we are. So moving on from a lot of internet aggro, because we can't be bothered to it. I'm going to ask you both. I hadn't seen this film before. I knew nothing about Munich, bar that it was based off the team, obviously being murdered at the 72 games. That it was obviously a Palestine and Israel matter. I didn't know the context behind it leading up to it, what happened after. And I certainly didn't know this film would be a film based upon the aftermath more so than the event. So my kind of question to you both is, does anyone have memories with this film or knowledge of it?
So I've never actually seen this film before, but I absolutely adore the Olympics. I'm a massive Olympics nut. Like I will be one of those people where I will kind of sit in front of a TV and just watch anything and everything, any event possible, anything and everything. I've read books on Olympic history. I've done kind of stuff in school about the Olympics. I was like an Olympic representative for various different things across just loads of different things to do with my sports, to do with kind of my education, just across the board. Adore the Olympics. So I had read into the 72 games and I knew about the event, but it never really strayed too far into the kind of political side of it and what happened afterwards. It was purely just that moment, kind of the attack, and then kind of the very brief effect that it had on the Olympics afterwards, and kind of how it's remembered and the different anniversaries of it. And I was in Munich this year at the Olympic Park, and suddenly I saw people handing out flyers, which was a 50th anniversary celebration. And I went, oh, it's this year is the 50th anniversary celebration? Wow, okay. And my brain didn't immediately go 50th anniversary of the Olympics. My brain immediately went to 50th anniversary since the massacre. And that's kind of the effect that it had on the games. And I knew that Spielberg had done the film of it. Like, we knew it was going to be coming up in the series. And this was one of those where I think at the start I said, which one are you looking forward to most? I think it was this one. I think this was the one which I actually listed down as, oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing this for the first time and getting into it. But I was never aware of anything that happened after the games. I wasn't even aware that the film wouldn't really focus on the event, but instead the aftermath and the after effects of the event.
Yeah, I watched this. I have seen it before, closer to its time of release. I mean, it would have been a couple of years after, I think, still, because I would have been definitely too young to have seen it in cinemas. But I have seen it between its release and between watching it again for this, only once. And I remember really enjoying it. I remember also just being not quite old enough to really want to dig deeper into the politicalness behind this film and what the real life events were. I just took it for face value and thought it was a very good film. Watching it now with a 2022 lens, yeah, it's taken on a different life for me, and I think it's fallen on how I originally thought of it. That being said, it stirs great discussion, which is why I'm happy to be here, because I think it is a film that holds a place. I'm not quite certain as to what that is, and I hope to discover that through our discussion. But yeah, it was interesting to revisit it, as I say, with that new lens.
No, it's very well said, and there's going to be some really interesting discussion points actually in this, because I'm going to do the plot synopsis as always, and then we're going to get into some bizarre behind the scenes, more of a lack of behind the scenes, when being blunt. So before we get into that, the IMDb plot synopsis, as we do for every episode on the series. After the Black September capture and massacre of Israeli athletes at the 1972 Olympics, 5 men are chosen to eliminate the people responsible for that fateful day. Nothing to say in regards to that. It's not the kind of film to probably like poke fun at the IMDb plot synopsis, but you know what you're in for based off reading that. We have Martin, the legend, in the comments. Martin watches a lot of these videos without seeing the films. I still don't know how, but maybe it helps him get a guise of what's to come. But we always begin behind the scenes for these, and this was a really tricky one. And I don't just scan wiki, I look at articles, I try and read some more modern stuff, but there was frightfully nothing for this, if I'm being really honest. And the one thing that I actually want to talk about instantly, I don't know the context of this, we probably don't know why. Steven Spielberg did not do any promotional interviews or discussions or junkets for this film. And again, I don't have the context of that. If someone knows, please comment them and tell me. But that is not something you get often. The only time I can visibly remember something similar in my head is Jim Carrey for Kick-Ass 2. That was obviously politically in minds, question marks over that, but that was obviously after a horrific shooting and he decided to drop out. But for a director of Spielberg's pedigree, not doing a sole bit of press, and it is also worth mentioning this film went into production 6 months before it came out, from filming to release. The Israeli government denounced the film as soon as its release. I'm very not torn, but because I can't really speak about that much behind the scenes, which is really frustrating because this one I would love to know more about. I'm just give my initial thoughts on this film. I'm kind of in a similar boat with Elliott, that had I watched this film when I was younger, I think I'd view it very differently to how I do now. And again, with very current political stuff, we see it stem into football, into sports, into entertainment. There's a lot of discussions to be had on this. I don't want to talk about sides, taking sides. There's not a clear right or a clear wrong. There's obviously, clear rights and wrongs in the case of, being against terrorism. Tayte, we kind of said this before. All that sort of stuff, which kind of makes it tricky for us to talk about, especially with this film. But where I'm going to kind of angle where I'm heading with this is, I know you two wouldn't have seen it because it won't be out at the time I was recording this. War of the Worlds video was last week. And it's our longest video on the series. This won't be longer, I promise you. That's 2 hours 40, and there's 4 people. And that was an incredible discussion. But a heavy amount of that was on the film being very much part of post 9/11, that style of filmmaking. So many minor things that they went from New York to Boston, and in reverse, the flights went from Boston to New York for the Twin Towers. There was loads of post 9/11 stuff with Spielberg in it, speaking about it, similarities in how the film shot to the events at the time. And Paul, who we had on that, spoke very well about Munich. And I'm going to give credit to Paul for this. I'm not taking any credit, but he calls it the post 9/11 trilogy, where he cites Minority Report, which is almost like the Patriot Act coming into play, stopping terror before it proceeds. War of the Worlds, which is how do you respond to, an extermination from aliens, could be argued in a similar guise. And then following up War of the Worlds with this, which is, I would call this genre an outright revenge film, if you would do it. And that's what took me by surprise. I was maybe expecting, and I said this before, like an Argo type, where we're going to find out about why are these people being held hostage, or we might have a very tense build up to what's happening. We might get background from why people are doing what they do. But this film kind of kickstarts with the events of Munich happening. And immediately, we will meet Eric Bana, and we're going to find out about this squad being put together to take revenge. I don't want to compare it to Inglourious Basterds, but now I've just said that out loud. There's almost the Inglourious Basterds feel. But obviously that came out years after, and that's very different. But I just want to ask you, how do we feel with that analogy of it being like a post 9/11 film? Because there are some things that I can really read into with that, more so than I can read about what I discovered from watching it.
So this film kind of looks into kind of just terrorism from one side being met with almost counter-terrorism from the other to a similar extent. It is a revenge film, and it's clear to say that both sides use methods and tactics in this film that are generally frowned upon. There is no hero in this film. You follow the main group of people, and they're kind of portrayed in this light. And I can completely understand why the Israeli government immediately went, no, we do not agree with this film straight away. You would disagree with this film if you're on either side of the debate. It's a very, very brutal kind of telling of these events, and it paints no one in a clear light. It's very grey. It's unbelievably grey, which I guess is what makes it a very intriguing film. It's very interesting that Spielberg did no kind of interviews, junkets, or any kind of press towards this film going into it as well. I'm assuming that he knew that there would be some form of kind of like backlash, or at least some form of kind of questioning that would go towards that. And by avoiding that, he's kind of absolving himself from having to kind of face those questions and just going, watch the film. Just watch the film and let that speak for it. And I'm not going to say anything, just go watch it. Which is, like you said, there isn't really many examples of anyone who's done that kind of before and just kind of absolved themselves and kind of taken themselves out of the situation, just gone, no, just watch the film. Just, you know, not going to promote it or anything like that. There's a really good video on YouTube made by John Bois, who's normally does sports stuff, but he did this video on the TV series 24 and how it showed kind of a clearer view of terrorism and violence post 9/11. And this film absolutely rings true with that, and how Spielberg portrays those different areas and how there's no clear-cut line, and the people who are considered to be the main characters of the story are definitely not the heroes of the story. And I think in one of the things that I read on Wikipedia, one of the Spielberg quotes about this film, I think post this film, so it would have been an interview from the future, he was talking about the character of Avner. And I do want to point this out. This is just to kind of confirm the film. It's a non-fiction event, or it's a fiction event with non-fiction thrown in. It's not a correct retelling of the events. It is, a lot of it is fictionalized. A lot of it is kind of made up to kind of not cover names, but change the names, change some of the aspects, and just kind of give you the feeling and the picture behind what happened afterwards. But either way, it portrays that kind of violence and terrorism in a way that puts it immediately into people's minds that it's always been there. Events like this have happened before 9/11. It's just never been kind of shown in that way. And like you said, with it kind of being like a trilogy of like the 3 different things that you would see yourself with, kind of those elements of terrorism, it's almost kind of the perfect end to that. It's the what happens if you kind of fight fire with fire situation, which is exactly what you see from the film.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And I think there's something odd for me in this film being made post 9/11, because I also watched a video after watching the film on the YouTube channel Unpacked, which just gave a quick 10-minute overview into the massacre and why it started and what sort of happened afterwards. And what this guy in the video is explaining was how, in effect, the massacre was a watershed moment for the rest of the world at large as to exactly what was happening in Israel and Palestine and that conflict. And that, you know, it was kind of the world's eyes being open to what was really going on. And so when you then, you know, and as all we know now in 2022 with what's happening in Israel and with Palestine, and then you kind of think as to how post 9/11 Middle Eastern people were represented in Hollywood, and then this film kind of got made as well. It was like, it's an odd time to choose to want to tell this story with the framing that it's being told. Now, now, of course, you know, that's not to say that the Palestinian people who committed this massacre were shown in a bad light in this film, because, you know, we've hit that foundational standpoint, George, as you said, that, you know, all terrorism is bad terrorism. Doesn't matter what side you're coming from. So, but yeah, I just think that the timing of it rings odd to me.
Yeah, and some of the behind the scenes that sort of carry from last week is that we knew that he wanted to do this before War of the Worlds. But both Spielberg and Tom Cruise were so desperate to work with each other once more. Tom Cruise pushed back Mission Impossible 3, Spielberg pushed back Munich, which I also think, again, this film was on his mind to do. That would have been immediately after Catch Me If You Can, which I guess is another historic one that also maybe may have some inaccuracies as this one does. But what I kind of ask you both, sort of following as well, because it is very tricky to talk about. Now we're talking about it's even harder than I thought it would be before, because one thing it's clear with this is the actual direction itself. It is a phenomenally directed film in regards to just the, not technical attributes, it's such a silly thing to say, but tension, mise en scene. You know, we've got Yanis Kaminski, of course, on cinematography, again, as we have with every Spielberg film since as this. But from a technical standpoint, there is very few things I could really criticize this film. My criticism is, again, the source material, which I think we'd all agree is, I mean, I don't think this film, would it be naive for me to say this film wouldn't get made in 2022? I don't think a studio would back it. Is probably my politer term. But I'm also reading again into the 9/11 stuff post. It's all about, we had the Patriot Act come into play. We had, the amount of young people just joining the army in America, stop terrorism, all this sort of stuff. And the release of this film to me is very awkward. And I don't want to, theorize, say stuff that we don't know about. But of course, this is a Steven Spielberg film, to me, the greatest director that's ever lived. For him not to do any press, and again, this is pure speculation on my behalf, no research, no radio threads, no nothing ridiculous. I would be the first to ask, is this a film down the line or during filming or after filming that he may have looked back on? Like he has said in public about Temple of Doom, that he's had regrets with that film, like he said of a few of his other films. Is this one he would potentially regret? Again, I don't know. I don't want to push any religious beliefs. I don't want to even get into speculation, but it's not his typical film. That's my main observation. It's not. I don't mean like a typical Spielberg film, but not what I expect from a Spielberg film, because we know he can do daunting, horrific tales. He's done that very much over his career, but there's just something about the source of this that feels so abrupt. I struggle to see Spielberg as the man that directed this. Yeah, of course he has. That's why we're talking about it. So I'm in this very weird bubble with this. That sounds a bit bonkers, because again, from a technical standpoint, I think this is magnificent.
From the technical standpoint, this is an absolutely amazing film. Not only for kind of the build-up of tension, but the release of tension. A lot of films can build up good tension. A lot of terrible horror films are really good at building tension, but then the actual release of the tension is terrible. It's awful. The jump scare doesn't work, or it's just, overused, or whatever is going on. With this film, that he's able to kind of pull those strings and get both of those things working in tandem. I think we'll talk about scenes a little bit later on, but the one scene with the phone box is the one that stands out to me most. Absolutely, of kind of a building tension to a very, very brief release of tension to building up the tension again. It's really, really well done, to the point where one of the final shots of the film is a genuine release of tension. It's like it's been building up the entire film, and then you get that final release at the very end. It's so well directed. It's so well done on those elements and aspects. And yet, like you said, it doesn't feel like a Spielberg film. And I don't know if that's because it's not a direct retelling of events. It's not your kind of Amistad's. It's not your, I think the poster's meant to be quite accurate to that. It's not your Sugarland Expresses even. It's a very loose retelling using different names and the same situation, but sometimes using real life people. It's like a David
Fincher film. Like there's something about this where you're following the way you follow characters, you follow the story. It feels like so many other directors, and again, that's not a criticism. That's more of a I didn't expect to see.
It's like if you removed all of the comedic and outlandish elements of a Tarantino retelling of history, this is what you get. It's brutal. It keeps having those brutal elements, but it hasn't got any of that wacky, zany stuff in the background that is absolutely fake. The stuff that is kind of not fake, but the stuff that happens in the film feels real. And that's maybe where, if he would have any regrets, he would go, maybe I should have done it accurately, or maybe I should have completely done it different and have it as like a kind of analogy for the situation at the time. Once again, like you said, it would be impossible to make this film nowadays. Absolutely impossible, given kind of the current political climate, to make this film. You can make films like this with the thriller elements. You can make films like this to do with terrorism and counterterrorism, but you can't use the names. You can't use the events. You can't use that, because the opinion has changed over time. And it's a difficult one either way. Do I think he has any regrets on it? I don't know. It would be an interesting one to ask him in an interview. I don't think Munich's on many people's minds, or maybe it might be because it's the 50th anniversary this current week. I guess when the film was uploaded, it would be almost 1 week after the anniversary. But yeah, it'd be an interesting question to put to him.
Yeah, it's that I do kind of, and you guys keep coming back to it, and it does keep bringing it back into my mind, just the avoidance of talking to the press at all, in promoting the film. And you do wonder, is it a case of did he try to distance himself, or was it a case of he just didn't want to talk about the politics? He wanted, because he might just have wanted, I've made a film, I want to talk about the film and the filmmaking and the filmmaking elements, but the foresight was that I'm not going to get a chance to talk about the film. It's going to be about the politics, and which I don't know, maybe that's the risk you run when you're making a film like this. And that, if you're obviously, you've made it for a reason. You've made it to, I would assume, to say something, not just to show these events, especially as a lot of it, as Tayte says, is fictionalized. So yeah, I wonder as to what the motivations were, and then as to what happened, as you say, George, before, during, or after that meant he distanced himself a bit, or appeared to distance himself a bit. I mean, do we want to go full conspiracy and say that the Israeli government pay him off to take a step back if they condemn the film? I doubt it. I'm not saying that they did at all, but it's you just don't know. Like it's such an open book that is also closed at the same time.
No, exactly, and it's so hard to talk because we've not had that with a single film of his, trying to find the behind the scenes, the discussions that follow. The only actual interview I've been able to find in regards to this is and it all came out, I think, last year, which was Daniel Craig talking about taking on the role of Bond. We'll get to it when we get to his character section. It's more relevant for the James Bond stuff, for being honest, but that's the only sort of behind the scenes interview stuff I've been able to find, which again is quite rare. I don't know if there were even junkets back in 2005 for this, if that's the case. But what I kind of want to move into with this, let's talk some of the characters, because we've obviously got Avner being played by Eric Bana. I've got a confession to make. This is only the second ever Eric Bana film I've seen after Star Trek. He's an actor that a lot of people speak or spoke about.
Hold on. After Star Trek,
you've not seen Troy.
You haven't seen Troy?
Oh no, I have seen Troy. Is he in Troy?
He's Hector.
I only remember Brad Pitt.
Have you not seen Ang Lee's Hulk?
No, I've not.
Oh my god!
That's what led Spielberg to cast him in this.
You have seen more films because he voiced someone in Finding Nemo.
Did he?
Yeah, he voiced. Wait a sec. Let me
find that out, because then I've seen 3, including this. I don't remember Troy. I saw it many years ago when I was younger. I was like, oh look, it's a Brad Pitt film, back before all the guys actually liked him.
Yeah, he voiced Anchor.
Is that the Hammerhead Shark?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. That's probably why I was probably passed out at that point. Too afraid to talk about them. Yeah. What do we make of? I mean, even like, again, I don't want to get into modern day. What does it take to make films and stuff? But Eric Bana is obviously Australian as well. So not that you need an Israeli or German actor for this, if I'm being honest. There's obviously, again, contextually, he might have different thoughts and whatnot, and if that was done today. But as an actor, I've not seen much from him. I thought he was... sorry.
If it helps, his parents are Croatian and German, so...
There'll be some heritage which will play into it.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty great in this, if I'm being honest. Again, so I'm not familiar with his work. I thought he was very good. Without jumping to the end, because it's a very weird scene, and I have seen that spoken about online before. The final scene, the montage, obviously during the sex scene, that's like I don't want to say weird. That's like a very good scene in the weirdest way I've ever imagined. Like, I know that's again jumping right in, but he has a sort of not internal performance, but his physical performance in this film, we can see where he is mentally on the inside. And he carries that for so long. When you get to the ending, I feel his character is sort of fleshed out, that I understand it, that what he's going through, what, the sort of, not PTSD, but the paranoia that's following from it. I think he's great in this. I think he works as a leading man, a leading actor. And again, because I don't know the source material, I know that obviously the character he's playing, akin to Tom Hanks in The Terminal with like a fictional city, this is almost a fictional character based off somebody from real life. I think it's Yuval Aviv is the real life person that led this team. And how do we feel with Eric Bana? Again, I think he's great. And actually, what kind of surprised me is he's not been in a Spielberg film since.
Yeah.
And normally, you know, I know Tom Cruise hasn't seen so far. We spoke about that at length. There's many reasons as potentially why that didn't happen, but Eric Bana, I would like to see him with him again because he was, again, this was a proper performance, I feel. And I feel I'd like to see him in more. I feel like Eric Bana was going to be in something big soon and dropped out as well, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? Tate, you about to jump in and go for it.
Yes, I was. So the first thing that I did after finishing this film was actually go, Eric Bana was great in that. What has he been doing recently? Because I feel like he's dropped off the earth. And in fact, he pretty much has. He's living with his family in Australia, living the quiet life, just doing Australian TV programs. That's a happy ending. That's, you know, that's your kind of like, oh, I'm going to kind of retire, but just look after my family and not really deal with all of the Hollywoodness of it all. But he was such a great actor. Like, that was always known. He was a good actor. There was a point where he was one of the most popular people on the planet for his acting and stuff like that. Do I want to see him work with Spielberg again? Absolutely, but I doubt it. I don't know if he's going to be going back to more Hollywood projects or anything like that. I think I saw in his profile page that he was voicing someone in the new Chip and Dale film. So maybe there's a little way in back to kind of, you know, not Hollywood, but, you know, a bit more back into the limelight and stuff like that. But like you said, his physical performance in this film, just to show off kind of his mental state and where he's at throughout the entire film, is fantastic. His acting as well on screen, he's a character you immediately gravitate to. And I know he's the main character, he's the main focus. But at the same time, he captions the screen so well. Like, you're always focusing on what he's doing, what he's listening into, who he's talking to, and everything like that. And he just kind of commands that role and really gives it everything. I really do feel like this was the one where, from all of his films, like, he does go a bit hammy in Troy a little bit, but that's a hammy film. You can get away with that. With this film, he really does act, and that really shows. And it is a shame that he isn't in more. And it isn't a shame, like, that, you know, you don't see him in Hollywood anymore. But for this film alone, it was good. It was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I think I like most is that he really captured the character's fallacy almost, you know, that he was thrown into this position, not really knowing what he had to do, but not really knowing how to do it. And that came through so strongly in just everything that Bana does.
The first kill scene really shows it off, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just that complete just nervousness and but then after, even like post the first kill, when they're then just like they're chilling out and they're relaxed, you know, they kind of had that moment where, oof, okay, yeah, all right, we can do this easy. Yeah, let's have some wine. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, you've got one kill and you kind of almost botched it up. So let's see how you go. But then, you know, he also, I kind of felt throughout the whole film, I always felt that he had his family in the back of his mind or at the front. Just they were always there. It was always present. Even when he was focused on the next assassination, I always got the sense that he was thinking of his family. And I think it really hit home when he hears his daughter's voice on the phone for the first time and he just instantly breaks down. I just thought that was stunning. And my girlfriend was sort of like walking in and out of the room as I was watching, and she sort of sat down. She was sat down at that moment, and I'm pretty sure there's a little audible gasp from her. You know, she wasn't even in the film, but I think it even struck with her as well, that one little moment. So yeah, it was incredible to watch.
And that scene as well, you mentioned it, what that does, and the film kind of, you know, tells us, oh, we've been doing this for X amount of time, are we doing it right, we're doing it wrong? But it's that scene where you realize the impact of what they're doing. Aside from the killing, it's you're missing your daughter grow up. You know, you're hearing her voice. That means she can already speak, which means that, you know, when he leaves, obviously his partner's pregnant as well. And it's really interesting that we get that family side, because not that it makes him a robot to be an assassin at all. I don't like that sort of analogy, but if we don't have the family dynamic, I don't think I feel like he'd ever have been past a two-dimensional government assassin character. I think by bringing a personal relationship, you know, they speak about his parents a lot. I'm not really invested in what happened with his parents. It's more seems to be implied than anything else in the film, but being able to see what he's losing. And when you get these little moments that, you know, obviously he's faithful, but had he have took the red-headed lady to his room, he'd have died. And there's those little minor things that you notice, and it leaves quite an impact, I think, his role. And again, some of the other characters we meet in this film, I feel, are two-dimensional. But when you're a supporting character in a revenge film, you're very often not going to get the time or the the screen time, I guess we could say, to develop further. And I feel we have that. If anyone wants to move on, has anyone got anything more to say about Eric Bana? We can move on to talk about some of the others.
No, move on.
Because we've got Ciarán Hinds in this. Ciarán Hinds is honestly one of those actors that I didn't have a clue who he was when I was younger. And as you got a bit older, you see more of his films. And he's such a great character actor. He's just always welcome in everything. I know we had Belfast earlier this year, and I absolutely love Belfast. I don't know why that's took a right old hitting on the internet over the last few months. It feels like some people get angry if you like enjoy films, which is sadistic. But Belfast, Ciarán Hinds is magnificent. And when we've had him in Game of Thrones for a load of years as well, of course, Harry Potter. I think he's a really good actor. And again, to see him in this, another reunion, he was in oh god, it's not Empire of Light. That's another Sam Mendes film. He was in Road to Perdition with Daniel Craig. Bit of a reunion there as well, and I think he's great. And also, he's one of the ones that dies himself, and Hans are the two that have those unfortunate fates. And I just think he's great at the dynamic, and he's almost a mentor / guide for Avner, would we say? It's a very interesting group of people that come together. I don't want to make any comparison to any of the mediums, but it's like I'm avoiding even bringing up a superhero film, for being honest. But when you bring again, it's like Inglourious Basterds, isn't it? You've got these people that have been personally affected via religious reasons. They're going to band together and create this team to go out and get them. And again, Inglourious Basterds after, it's just easy for me to say that. And obviously, this is based off real life. That's not. How do we feel with Ciarán Hinds? With what happens to him, I feel that it's projected that it kind of would have happened. That had Daniel Craig have gone, I don't think it would have been. We'll get to Craig, but it wouldn't have been too big a loss on the film. But because Ciarán Hinds has played the number 2, the right hand man, that's why we've had this attachment to him.
Yeah, it's like you said, he's an actor who will pop up in various different things, and he will always put in a stellar performance. And his character did feel like being the second man, the glue to the team. You always get that with the second player in the team. It's the one who draws everyone together, but I kind of felt from the start immediately, he's gone. It was the first thing I was like, oh, Ciarán Hinds in this. Oh, he's playing that role. Oh, yeah, he's dying. That's happening. But yeah, that's what you get from kind of not these kind of films. That's what you kind of got the feeling of straight away from his kind of character, his approach, and just, the aura around him. I'm not saying it's like a kind of that it's full on fiction or anything like that, and it's part of the hero's journey, but it fits the bill, if that makes sense. And there's debate as to whether that would have actually happened in real life or not. You'd have to go and kind of check the historical accuracies to the film, and it all gets muddled at that point or anything like that. But from all of the characters that are there and depicted, it seems like that would have been the different kind of reactions, the different ways that they would have kind of done the job. There was some people who kind of want to take it head on, rush in, gun ho, and stuff like that, like Daniel Craig's character. There are some people who want to kind of take a more measured approach, like Eric Bana's character, and then you've got Ciarán Hinds as well, who's kind of taking his own approach, where it's more like spy work, if anything. So you've got all those different characters with all those different motivations and stuff like that, and that's kind of the feeling the film gives off. It's a bunch of people who've been thrown together on a mission that they don't really know anything about, and just being told to do really kind of horrific things. And it's kind of all portrayed through Spielberg's lens of kind of very gray areas of what is right and what is wrong, and whether it's right to take revenge and retaliate in the same way that it's dealt to you. And like, you need good actors for that. And Ciarán Hinds, it's Ciarán Hinds.
I think what I liked about his character, he kind of has that almost I literally had it in my head and now it's gone. The Kingsman. His character's almost kind of Kingsman-y. in a way. You know, it's kind of like it's almost the next step for his character. If he was to go full spy, I think he'd be a Kingsman. And I did just kind of love, particularly after the first assassination, how he just sort of turns up to the door just to check what's going on, and just, you know, goes and picks up the bullet cap as a little memento for their first kill. I think, you know, when you have that opening scene of the group sat around the dinner table, and I was kind of looking, and I was in part trying to remember what happened to the characters, but honestly not having much of a memory. But then certainly like picking up, right, well, Robert's the young one, so he's probably going to die. And also he's the bomb maker that's not quite sure what he's doing. So, you know, there's always a chance he's going to go. Lo and behold, Hans is the older guy, usually the eldest, sort of always goes as well. And then, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think they all had scope to probably end up dying. I mean, you know, even Daniel Craig's character, Steve, as we said, he's the gung-ho one. So there's a chance he, you know, through a fit of rage would end up gone. But Kieran Hines has always brought an interesting weight to the characters he's played, at least the ones that I've seen. You know, Mance Raider, definitely there was a wonderful weight to that character, someone that could have just been, you know, all about flesh and blood, but actually no, he was about his people, he was about survival, he was about this and that, and you need someone of Hines's gravitas to, as I say, bring that weight to these characters.
No, really well said in there as well. You do see it, and that stems in a lot of his performances as well. And I think because he's got such an intimidating like physique as well, for a lot of films you see him in, that they, when we get to delve into him, he's not like Cuddy on the inside, but you know, that sort of, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. You'd expect him to be in these like tough roles, but he's always got so much more weight to him. Let's talk Daniel Craig, because I'm excited for this. Obviously, I'm a massive fan of Daniel Craig. He's my second favorite Bond after Brosnan, and I absolutely adore him. I'm just going to go with some behind the scenes I do know. So without this film, we don't get Daniel Craig's James Bond. And if I don't know if either of you two know this is only came out in the last year. So Daniel Craig didn't really want to do Bond. He'd never committed to it. He'd already told them, I'd only do it if you give me a full script before I say yes. And at that point, he was, I think, just about to start filming this, or was in pre-production. He showed Steven Spielberg the entire script, and he let Spielberg read the script for Casino Royale. And Spielberg basically says, like, you have to take this film now. Like, you have to take this performance as James Bond. And the famous Daniel Craig press conference where he's got long blonde hair. It was a terrible announcement, because not just the media mocked him, but he's growing his hair out for this film. He's on a riverboat in the Thames, and because it's not James Bond in real life, he has to wear like life jackets, and I think he was like shattered as well. It's a very famous, infamous, unveiling. But we don't get, his Bond without this, which I'm just going to keep bringing it. But I think he's great in this, because I don't know if either of you have this affected other Bonds. Not that they've ever been typecast. Some obviously have. But it's you can't shake the image of being James Bond. It is bigger than any of the six, as far as I'm concerned, they've ever played it. Even when you're watching Indy 3, it's Indiana Jones' dad. Yeah, his dad's James Bloody Bond. That's why. And it's great for it. And that's one of the reasons I think still why Spielberg wanted Sean Connery, because we all know Spielberg's a massive fan of Bond. He wanted to do a Bond film, and it never worked out with them being able to do it. And in this film, it isn't even just Daniel Craig. I've chucked them both in there. We get a Matthew Almeric, who, of course, would go on to be in Quantum of Solace. And we have Michael Lonsdale from Moonraker, who completely caught me by surprise. Didn't know he was in this film, which was an amazing character of Papa. Really interesting character that I didn't expect in a film like this.
No.
Almost like, not like a Bond villain, but it's like, you're the head of a seedy organization that buys and sells information on governments, individuals, and there you are at home as the family man called like Papa, who will take care of you. That's like, we've mentioned Kingsman tonight. That is like a proper Kingsman character for me. Like, thinking of that, and I love their relationship. Sorry to jump away from Daniel Craig, but my thoughts on Daniel Craig in this: another good South African accent in films. It's one of the best accents as far as I'm concerned, and. As I'll always say, it's the blue eyes. He has the eyes of a killer. And in this film, when you've got that great standoff scene with the Palestinian Secret Service, I think it is, when they're holding the gun at the door, you just have to like double take, like, okay, no, I'm not watching a Bond film. This is a Spielberg one, but that is the next James Bond, which people probably would have said in 2005. And yeah, how do you feel about Daniel Craig in this? Because I enjoyed him. Again, he doesn't have that much to do, but I enjoyed him. It's great to see him in films that's not Bond. The same for every Bond actor.
Yeah, I feel like there's always those films that have kind of mentioned as to why the Bond became Bond, and I know that Layer Cake was the one that really got him the Bond role, but this is, I guess, one that kind of cemented it in people's minds already, that it was kind of, he was going to become that character. Of course, like, he wasn't offered the role off this. This is too soon to be kind of considered off that. He was already in consideration.
He'd already been offered, hadn't he?
He'd already been offered it. But this is one of those where I'm sure on the set, like, he would have been, you know, more willing to kind of put into that role because he know, well, people are going to see this, people are going to know this, so this is kind of what the character should be like. Or whether Spielberg even had input into that and went, do you know what? Here's some extra stuff to do in your role. We'll push you right forward for it. I wouldn't be too surprised if that was the case, honestly. That's another question to ask Mr. Spielberg. We've got a few tonight. But no, as well as that, the Papa kind of dynamic from the film, that is like a Jean Le Carre styled villain right there. That is spy and espionage at its finest. And whether that is actually true or anything like that, I want to look into, because that is either a fantastic idea for another spy film and another kind of, you know, another character to have intrigue into, or it's phenomenal that that's an actual real life kind of person, and that was kind of how they dealt with business. Louis as well, played by Mathieu Amalric, like, I love him. I always liked his character anyway in Quantum. I'm a big defender of Quantum anyway, so like,
he's very underused, isn't he?
He is.
That's no one. That film's more of a victim of the writer's strike. I still maintain that. I think it would have been a very different film if it hadn't.
I still defend it, even with the writer's strike. I still defend Quantum. I think it's better than Spectre, at least. That's a topic for a different day completely. But no, loved his character. He's always got that kind of quirkiness to him, which always stands out. I absolutely loved him as well in what was it called, Grand Budapest Hotel, and his character in there. So every single time he pops up on the screen, it'll always get to me. And, you know, he's a fun character that you can just kind of follow around. But his character in this film was very seedy. Very seedy. But yeah, no, interesting character dynamics, interesting characters that are portrayed in the film. Whether they're actually real or not, I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, Daniel Craig, it was an odd... I completely forgot that he was in this film. And when his first couple of lines were coming out, I thought his accent was slightly off at first, and I thought he was Australian, and I was like, "God, that's brave, going for Australian opposite Eric Bana, who is not going Australian." But yeah, I mean, once it got deeper in and my ears are tuned, I noticed it was more South African, and yeah, I was like, okay, fair enough then. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed him, and you're definitely right that scene with the Palestinian Secret Service, you can definitely see the Bondisms in there. The way he holds a gun, I was like, that's literally how you ended up doing it for the next 15, 20 years. So yeah, amazing. Yeah, you can completely see it there. And yeah, and Mathieu Amalric, I thought he was phenomenal in this. Again, you know, he never really has much to do, to be fair. Like, his scenes are all kind of very similar, but he does that so beautifully, and I think he does that well in Quantum of Solace as well, of keeping that tightrope walk of I'm sinister, I'm offending you, I'm letting you know I'm offending you, but I'm smiling the whole way through it, you know. And I think he just does it so perfectly. He's great at like presenting power. And this sounds really weird. I'm not trying to make out like it's like a physical thing, but for somebody that would maybe one could say is like would be stereotyped as a smaller French, don't say like weakling or something stupid, but for someone that might not have a physical presence, he has a powerful presence because of how he performs his attitudes. That he knows what he's doing every time he goes to speak to them, that he has the knowledge they need. And he's a really fascinating individual in this film, because even when he says, you know, why would I turn on you? You pay us the most money of anyone we speak to. You're safe as far as I'm concerned. And you're there like, can you believe him? I kind of can, but you shouldn't at the same time. And
I kind of love that about him, and you're right. We've seen it in a few of his films, and I've never seen any of his French films. That's on me. But I think he's a very underrated actor. When he's been in a few Wes Anderson films, hasn't he? When he pops up in these films, he's usually pretty great, and I think certainly this one, and even sticking on the Bond stuff. Sorry, but isn't it a shame we've never had a Spielberg Bond film still? I mean, I don't know if either of you two have seen the news today. John Williams is there's a Classic FM interview with John Williams coming on the news at some point this week, which is really cool. And they've done a bit of a preview, and he actually says that he would love to score the next Bond film. We haven't got to the John Williams section yet, but he's just turned 90 and he wants to do another franchise after saying he's going to retire with Indiana Jones. But you know, we were robbed of a Spielberg, John Williams Bond film back in the day, and again, the tension that this film has. We mentioned the scene with Craig and the guns. That's a proper, to me, like James Bond scene that, you know, if one of them puts it down too early, would the others have shot? And he knows how to bring tension. And I think the cast has been perfectly cast for how they are needed in this film. You know, the South African accent of Craig is interesting. Some kind of same as you. When you first hear him, I think your ears have to adapt that you're hearing Daniel Craig so you can hear the Britishness straight away. But then you slowly start to realize that, okay, he's doing a different accent. And when you really nail down the South African, he's a pretty convincing South African accent, I'm going to say. And I think, again, because we've had him as Bond for, you know, however many times people might have rewatched them all as well, he's got his own presence. Now, I just think the cast in this were just excellent. And again, it's the Spielberg casting the people in those. He very, very, very rarely gets it wrong with his films when you think about cast. And we spoke about War of the Worlds, that maybe the weakness was Robbie the Son last week, and again, he very rarely gets it wrong. But as an ensemble film with Eric Bana leading it, this stands out in its own right because it is more of a, although it's a revenge film, there's a lot of, I'm trying to think the right terms, like psychological elements to it, and you can tell that you don't ever know when each of these characters is going to crack, and it's really interesting, like, observing into some of the others. I don't know if anyone wants to bring up any others, but again, yeah, just like Papa and Louie are just great characters in their own right. And not that you'd want to spend too much time with them because you might lose the charm of both, but when they pop up in the film, they're always welcome to, and you kind of know that something's going to happen. Even like the FBI scene, when you're meant to, oh, were these just idiot drunk Americans, or were these the FBI backing him? Because that raises the espionage to yourself that, oh, were they in on it? Who's in on it? Who are we meant to be looking out for? It raises really good questions. And if anything, anyone else might have anything more to add on the cast?
I was going to say, like, it creeps in towards the end of the film, but the paranoia definitely rises up throughout the film. Especially after the midway point, after they've done a few kills, it really ramps up, and the tension between the different characters, you can tell that everyone's on an absolute knife edge, and everyone's performances tweak to that very, very quickly. And I think there isn't someone who's like acting out of character. Like, you can see people sweating, you can see kind of people giving quick glances and getting a bit more kind of tense and on edge. And I think that is down to the direction. That's down to kind of Spielberg telling the characters, okay, guys, like, we need to tune it up again. It needs to be more on edge, and everyone needs to be on the same page of how on edge it is. And all the characters respond to that very quickly as well. So, no, overall, especially for, like you said, an ensemble piece, like, it's a really well put together kind of piece in that sense. And yeah.
I don't think I've got much more to say on that.
No, definitely. I mean, I mentioned Joel Williams. Let's talk the score. So this got nominated for an Oscar. We'll get to the others later. I didn't notice the score as much. No. I've said that a few times recently. You know, it will be on the intro, I'm sure, for this one. But, you know, listen, it's John Williams. We've said it every week, and it feels boring. We should have hired like a John Williams expert to like send in video thoughts every week, because, you know, I'm sure there's some very good stuff. And I think when you're on a first watch for a film that's so heavy on the dialogue, there's not really moments where the soundtrack's there, and when you've got those tense scenes, the score doesn't pop. But I don't need a big brass, you know, imposing soundtrack. This isn't that kind of film. This has got to be that subtle, nuanced. I'm trying to think of a score that's done it really well. I'm not going to, because I should be listing off loads of films that, you know, just have that kind of thing. But yeah, nominated for an Oscar. So maybe I should just listen to it behind the scenes just to figure out, okay, maybe this was really good. I didn't notice it. But we also know how it goes all the time. John Williams is doing a film with Spielberg.
He's doing a film. Let's just
easy
whack him on the list.
He's done 4 this year. Let's just nominate the Spielberg one. That's sometimes how I honestly feel. So I've not got any. If anyone's got anything to add on the score, jump in now. Otherwise, we can move on to some of the other stuff.
2 scenes where I recognize the score. First scene was the first opening scene and the credits. It's really unusual. I feel like the title card was so out of place in this film, and I don't know why. Like, it lists all the different cities for the different Olympics, and then it just kind of highlights Munich, and it's like really weird kind of, I don't know what the kind of transition shot is, but it's just kind of odd, and they've got a bit of music in the background there where I noticed it. And then the only other scene is the very end of the film with the montage. Those are the only 2 scenes where I recognized any of the music kind of being played, or it kind of, resonated with me at any point. The rest of the film, I'm assuming there was music. It just felt like filler. I was so focused on what was actually happening on screen.
Yeah, I think, George, you kind of put it correctly in saying that the tension is there throughout the whole film. So, if it's all more of an underscore than an overture, then it's doing its job perfectly, because you do feel tense in those scenes. And if it's present or if it's not, because if it's not present, then what's happening on screen is enough. If it's present, then it means there's something that it just needs to lift what's happening on screen a bit. And it's clearly done that, because we've all felt the tension, but not necessarily noticed the score throughout. So, yeah. I mean, it must have done something great.
No, definitely. It's popped. The one I was thinking of, I don't want to just say, but if anyone's seen Sicario, there's a really good bit of tension on the build up to the bridge scene of the score, and that's what I'm kind of thinking about. That time, if anyone knows it, you'll know what I mean. But let's talk about when this film came out. So obviously, I'm not just going to sit here and list off, also controversial things. Obviously, we mentioned that it was sort of dismissed instantly by the Israeli government. And obviously, a lot of conversation with this film coming out at the time was, you are making these characters look like terrorists. That was not a reflection of what they believed it was like in there, which I understand that ideology, that you can watch this film at some points and think that you're so disconnected from the opening of the incidents that they're just going around assassinating people. I can understand a lot of criticism this film may have faced then. I certainly understand a lot of it now. And the ways in which, I mean, there's probably many dissertations on this, but as you mentioned earlier, it is the media representation of Muslims post 9/11. That is, there's just, and now we're seeing, even in the last 2-3 years, we're slowly starting to see more point of view experiences from maybe like Muslim filmmakers. I'm thinking of the Cumberbatch one from last year, The Mauritanian, if anyone saw that.
That's still got a bit of backlash. That's still got a bit of backlash as well, as being a bit of a white savior film. But because Cumberbatch comes in and saves the day. And fun random fact: if anyone wants to watch it and help change this, our least ever viewed video on this channel was the Mauritanian review, which is a really random thing to put out there. Yeah, it had like 19 or it still has 19 or 20 views. And I think, again, outside of England, no one knew that film. And again, you could even not jump to because of YouTube views, but look, this goes into some horrors that some people from Israel may have faced. No, we don't want to push that one. Let's not bring that up in the conversation. And that would happen for, and we'll say we're not tin hat conspiracy theorists, but there are very real conversations like that by mega corporations, mega companies. And again, that's 2021 versus 2005. So box office wise, this is where it got very interesting for me. It made $131 million off a budget of $70 million. For comparison, that is one of Steven Spielberg's lowest grossing films of his career. Wow. And what kind of makes it quite crazy in that respect is that it's 2005. Now, I believe, I might be wrong in this, but one of the lowest, maybe if you bring inflation into it, is West Side Story from last year. We'll get to that later this year, but obviously, there's a humongous reason that begins with C for that, coronavirus, maybe the S word for Spider-Man. And obviously that film has gone on to have, I think, will have a very good legacy by one of the lead actors. But that's, again, a different conversation to join us in November 4. But accolades-wise, this was nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and Score. We've mentioned score. I want to talk screenplay. I'm so sorry, I didn't bring this up earlier. Yeah. It is worth noting that this film
was Steven Spielberg's first film with, oh dear me, where's the name gone off my spreadsheet? Give me one moment. Tony Kushner. They've done 4 films together, and Tony Kushner is co-writing The Fabelmans with him.
Yes.
And this was his first or 4 films he's done with him, which is very interesting. I'd imagine if that film, Spielberg's probably wrote it, and Kushner's probably gone in with a, it probably helped him on a rewrite or something. With Spielberg, he's only written 1 film before, which was Close Encounters. But how do you feel, again, not to sort of look at the past, if you're curious about the Oscar year, it was the year that Crash won Best Film, which is often deemed not just one of the worst wins of all time, but obviously the big film for that year that didn't win was Brokeback Mountain, which is, everyone spoke about that over the course of history. But how do you feel with it getting those nominations? Are you surprised? I'm fully with it being nominated for Best Director, if I'm being honest. I think that I can't fault the direction, more so I fault the story and point of view as the audience. Does that sound weird?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I mean,
when I say I can't fault direction, I mean that obviously it's a criticism, the story also, which is involved in direction. I'm just going to add, but I meant the technical standpoint. Sorry, I should have cleared that.
I mean, if we're just looking at kind of the impact and kind of what we see of it now from this film, like you said, Elliot, you'd seen it before and you had a very different opinion of it back then than you do now. The impact upon release, it did have some backlash, but it also got a lot of critical praise, a heavy amount of critical praise for the filmmaking and for kind of the story told. It wasn't too fresh in people's memories, so it would have taken some rejogging of people's minds. I mean, that would have been almost 30 years past the date of when the actual thing happened. So I think it was far enough removed that kind of you can make commentaries on it without really having, a humongous impact on it, but it still impacted people, if that makes sense. It's interesting to note that it is one of his lowest grossing films, because that actually surprised me. I thought big Oscar film, making the push for those awards and stuff like that. Maybe he didn't do enough self-advertising. Maybe that was the case. But the fact that it got 5 nominations, didn't win a single thing in that year, where Brokeback Mountain pretty much sweeps everything apart from Best Picture, which was won by Crash, is very interesting. Because I would say, I've seen Crash. This film is better than Crash. This film should have won over Crash. Brokeback Mountain should have won, don't get me wrong here, but, this film in particular was a better film than that as well. How's it perceived today? We've discussed it now. It's
is it something people would discuss? That's the thing. Like, not jumping further, but like, is this something people would consciously watch today? That sounds horrible. I don't mean it in that respect. It's not that bad.
Dare I say yes, purely out of the fact that it's the 50th anniversary this year. Right now, basically, is the 50th anniversary of it happening. So it's going to be in people's minds. It's going to be kind of in the public conscious again that this event has happened. And people will be kind of mourning the losses of that day. I know they've had the kind of these European Games in Munich recently as well. And I want to say they touched upon that being the 50th anniversary of not only the games, but also of this tragedy. So I think this film being the most famous kind of retelling of it, I think there's also a film called, I can't remember what the name of the documentary was, but someone made a documentary on it. Is it not One Day in September or something like that?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Is it One Day in September, which is meant to be a very fantastic retelling of just the events. And like I said, we didn't know what we were really getting into when watching this film. I thought it was going to be solely based on this event and this event alone of the massacre, not like 5% of the massacre, 95% of what happened afterwards. So yeah, it's an unusual one. Do I like it? Do I regard it well? It's a well-made film, but it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And having talked it over at the start of this, I was like, it's middling. I don't know where to put it. I don't know whether to say it's a fantastic film or whether to say it's kind of a difficult film, given kind of the current political kind of nature of it. It's still middling for me, but I'm leaning towards it being more of a positive kind of filmmaking experience, if that makes any sense. I was rambling a lot.
I get it. No, I get what you mean. Yeah, look, the nominations. I kind of think that in terms of filmmaking, and if we focus just on that sole aspect of it, it probably does deserve to be somewhere up there and being spoken about at that time of releasing. I think just the thing I have with this film, and this is me looking at it from a today lens as opposed to when I watched it originally. As I mentioned earlier, you know, this video that I watched on YouTube earlier, it was just one 10-minute video, and it was very surface level. But the sort of closing sentiments of that video were that the event in 72 was a watershed moment for the conflict in Israel and Palestine. And so that when you are making a film like this, however many years later, 30 years later, you have to, I just feel it wasn't made with the hindsight. It wasn't made with looking back. It was made with we're making it in the, you know, set in 1972 and 1973. So we have to sort of choose a side and stay true to that. And for me, that is where this film really unravels and falls apart for me, unfortunately. And especially when we're looking at it now. And would people pick it up now? Yeah, I think they would. As an example of, look, if we're going to have conversations about this with hindsight, we can't stick to one side. We have to talk about both sides. We have to talk about why these Palestinians did this. As I say, there's no excuse for terrorism, but it's still something that needs to be examined. I believe anyway. Now that we, knowing now what we know, but we still have to keep a distance, and so it's just, I think, yes, people will watch it now. I think filmmaking, yes, it deserved the nominations probably. However, it holds a massive caveat for me, and so similar to Tayte, whereas I hit down the middle of the road, I now fall more towards the negative side as opposed to the positive side.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, and it does stir up a very interesting sort of conversation with that bit. And I don't want to do. Would you recommend this to any of the new releases? But if someone's going to ask me, well, what would you do? I'd probably say, again, find a documentary on this subject matter, or if you want to watch a film, go watch a different Spielberg film, because I don't want to get into like audience consumer stuff, but dropping this in 2005 to get your country's already riled up about a horrific event from the years before. This only like furthers the storm, and obviously ultimately the race of the Palestinians is the same race that they've gone for post 9/11. And I'm glad you mentioned that the video you've seen there as well, because it is a watershed moment. And I'd imagine, post World War II, there's probably nothing that. And it's not really a nice thing to be thinking about, like what are the mega terrorist moments, but you'd imagine pre 9/11, this would have been one of them in terms of mass media coverage. An Olympic Games, Tayte, as you mentioned, we all know. Certainly, I'd say without games, let's say then more than now, the Olympics was the biggest sporting event in the world, and it's still one of them now. But I believe I would argue it's echoed now by modern football, the World Cup. But certainly, even when I was younger, the stature of the Olympics was so much higher than anything, because it was the whole world coming together for this month of games with all the sports people there. And for a terrorist organization to go to that, knowing the world will be watching, that's where that came from. And it is a really interesting one. And kind of segueing on from that, just before we get to final thoughts, I'd love to get a scene from everyone. I don't want to say favorite scenes because this one's pretty grim in that respect, but a notable scene. To me, the only one that stands out in my head, I think the best scene of this film is the tension of the phone call. When the little girl answers it, and you've got them running. They don't want to get an innocent bystander in the way.
Yeah.
Again, the direction, just unbelievable, and the whole. But even a later scene when you've got the house with the other people, there's so many great scenes that are directed and crafted in this film. And I've got to go for the phone situation, and then to get the finale where they still end up blowing the person up. They do get it right, but it's that kind of look how close we were to doing the wrong thing. I thought that scene was just incredible.
Yeah, I would say that scene really does stand out. The other scene is the first kill and kind of the tension and the nervousness around that scene as well. is just fantastic. Just the ability to kind of have that tension build up, and then have the payoff come off in both of those scenes is just so well done. Just displays everyone's acting talents on screen, and it's really well filmed. It's really well built up. It's really well shot. It's just everything that goes with it. It's really good.
Yeah. I think it's definitely the phone booth scene for me as well. But another notable one I also think was with the TV bomb as well, and it not working, and them having to change the plan and improvise. And yeah, I thought that was also really wonderfully done, and it sets in motion a lot of things that happen for the rest of the film, because they're kind of made after that film, and especially as they kill one of the Russian spies as well, and that's it. Everyone's sort of after them after that scene, so it's quite a big scene as well for that.
No, definitely. And with that, we'll head into our final thoughts. So we've kind of spoken about it just before this, but I think this is a very, very good film. But I think in my sort of viewing of it, I can't hide from the current situation. My first experience of this film being this week makes it even tougher to talk about as well. The fact that the events are 50 years ago, again, I can't fault the technical standpoints of this film, but the subject matter for me, I'm almost, again, at the age I've seen this at, it's just not as... It's tough. It's a very tough one to speak about, because I'm sure there are people watching that have completely opposite beliefs, but I'm going to be blunt. I don't think this film should have even been called Munich, if I'm being honest. They should have used is it Wrath of Gods, the code name that they used afterwards?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I think that was probably more fitting, because I don't ever, again, Munich is what inspires the events of this film.
Yeah,
it doesn't ever feel like I'm actually following that. So that's kind of my thoughts. It's a weird one for me to talk about. I think I need to simmer it down, take it in for a few more weeks. But I'm also going to be blunt and say this probably isn't a film of his I'll be willing to go back to anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a well-filmed piece of false advertising from Spielberg's part. I was expecting just to, have stuff about Munich, whereas Munich only fills out about, was it first 15, 20 minutes of the entire film? That's it. That's kind of all they really go to. Then they kind of country hop all over the place to kind of find the people who did it. It's well filmed. It's well acted. It's very difficult to talk about what is actually in the film. And given kind of the situation around the filming as well, that post 9/11 era and everything like that, it is a misstep when you kind of reflect upon it. And it's a shame about that, like that it didn't take into kind of, accounts from either sides and went very heavy onto one side. And it ended up kind of, instead of being kind of lifting and shining light on the situation, it ended up pissing off everyone instead from the situation. So it's a shame about that. Would I recommend it? I mean, I'd recommend it as far as saying it's the 50th anniversary. We need to recognize that there was loss of life, and we need to respect that. But if there are documentaries out there that portrayed the actual events better and talk about even the after effects of the events from a more realistic perspective, then I would say go and seek those out and go watch that. It is a Spielberg film if you're watching through all the Spielberg films, and of course this is going to be on your list, but I'd say take it with a pinch of salt and watch it as a film, not as an accurate retelling of events.
Yeah, I think I'm glad I've revisited it with the new knowledge, with knowing now what I know, with being more politically invested at this age than I was when I was younger. And I think that is something people just in general need to take away, in that, we have these ideas of what things are or what things should be, but we never challenge our own viewpoints on them. I remember watching it when I sat down to watch it. I was like, oh, right. I was really excited because I knew I loved this when I was younger. Can't wait to watch this again. I've watched it again now, and yeah, as I said, it's not the same film for me anymore. So, but I'm glad that I've done that. I'm glad that I've taken that time, and that I can assess it with a different viewpoint now. And so, for that reason, I suppose I would recommend people to watch it, so that hopefully that will bleed into other things in life for people as well, that they can go, right, okay, so that wasn't quite right. What else actually probably isn't quite right? And can I reassess and ask questions about and delve into a bit deeper?
Yeah, very well said. And as I said, this is a tricky one, but I think we've handled this pretty well. It's been a very good discussion, quite opening as well. And what we'll do, we want to turn to the comment section. As I said, if you're still watching, let us know your thoughts on the film. Maybe again, I'm not saying sides, please don't talk about sides, but I'm just saying if you know some of the political background as well, maybe you don't. I'm curious to know that maybe if this discussion has maybe changed some thoughts, or again, if you're the same as Elliott, maybe you saw it many years ago, you visited an older age or more mature age, or with further knowledge about the current political climate. It's a very interesting one to talk about, and I'd be very curious to hear people. So please do comment those thoughts, and maybe you've liked this video and you're a fan of Steven Spielberg, you've come across this. As we said, it's the 5th version of the game, so we're not hashtagging like 50s or that sort of stuff. But if you like this video, please consider hitting subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more Steven Spielberg stuff on there. As I said, this is episode number 25. There's going to be 34, potentially 35. By the time the video comes out, we'll know the London Film Festival lineup, so we'll know if we're going to get to see the Fabelmans or not. No pressure, London. This might look ridiculous a few weeks away, but if you're curious about what does come next, the reason I'm laughing is because I've already spoken about it. Of course, that is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, coming Tuesday, the 20th of September.
Let's go from one film that could have some interesting comments to a film that we know is definitely going to have some interesting comments.
And interesting, the one that, like at the time, very, very well received that people don't talk about. So that is going to be fantastic. Yeah, trust me, you'd be look at its box office and look at its critic reviews from the time. It is fascinating. Lord. So that's going to be a very interesting one to talk about, and we'll have more details as we get to it next week. And aside from Indiana Jones, what else do we have coming up for the Steven Spielberg Retrospective? Well, we've got The Adventures of Tintin, followed by Warhorse and Lincoln. Now, those 2 dates in October, of course, they're historical films. That'll be during the London Film Festival. So if you're curious about behind the scenes, we've said it before. We've had a big update video, which would have been at the end of August at the time of this video coming out. We're trying to not cram them in. That sounds unfair, but we've got to prepare for the festival. So a lot of these are being batch recorded. There might be some humongous new stuff over the next few weeks that we don't know. There might be reviews coming out we don't know about. So there's a lot of things happening, and the best way to stick with us is being subscribed to the channel. And Tayte, when they subscribe to the channel, where's the best place for them to find us to find out what videos we're going to be talking about?
Twitter and Instagram are usually the best places to find us. We're quite active on there, so go follow us at cinema_savvy. Go and find us as well on Facebook and Letterboxd. That is just Cinema Savvy. And also go into the link in the description, pick up a t-shirt or a pillow or whatever you want to do from Redbubble, and help out supporting our channel.
Definitely. So everyone take a look at those. And Elliott, again, for yourself, link in the description below. Not to put you on the spot, I know you're working on the play as well. Any videos that you're thinking about doing in the near horizon, or any big releases? I know we've got Black Panther 2 is probably the next big blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Black Panther 2, we've got The Woman King coming as well, which I can't miss. And yeah, I mean, I'll if it's not out already, there's going to be something on Rings of Power, because I think that, along with House of the Targaryen, there's something to talk about the placement of minoritized race people within fantasy genre, because it's fantasy.
Yes.
That's it. And some people, So some of the things that are being said and heard, and when that video comes out, I'll be watching that, don't worry, and we'll share that on our socials as well. So
thank you.
That is going to do it for tonight's video. Again, thank you everybody for watching at home. Thank you, Elliott, for taking time out to join us again, talking Munich in between shows. I probably gutted it's not an Indiana Jones film, maybe the first 3, not the 4th. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to get you back on, and we will have you on some more down the line. And to everybody at home, also thank you for joining us and taking time out. And be sure to see us on the next one. Take care.